Fender have always done a great job at recreating their classic models, but the American Vintage 2s see them do this at top of the line price points. Well, what features justify this cost, and how well do these stack up to their closest counterparts in the current catalogue? We've picked out a few comparisons to look at in detail to analyse this, and if you want to see more content like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. So let's dive into these comparisons. The American Vintage 2 is Fender's latest series, but it might be a little bit tricky to know where these sit in the overall range and what makes them stand out from their counterparts. So we're going to go through and compare and contrast to some of their closest relatives in the catalogue. We'll start with the similarities then. Well, on the necks, they both have the 7.25-inch fingerboard radius. So when you are playing on this fretboard, it has that familiar curve and feel that is instantly reminiscent of vintage Fender necks. I suppose the difference would lay in the neck profile. So the 57 in my hand has what's called a 1957 V, which is this soft V profile that's very characteristic, very distinctive, and almost exclusively reminds me of late 50s pre-CBS Fenders. The Vintera, on the other hand, has a more C-shaped profile, which is slightly more modern, it's slightly more ergonomic, and a lot of people would argue it's more playable. So this is horses for courses at this stage. If you want maybe the vintage tone, but with a more modern feeling neck that's slightly easier to play and dart around on, then the Vintera is a cracking choice. But if you want really period correct specs, then the 57 is a little bit closer to what a genuine late 50s Strat would feel like. The cosmetics then, as you can see, the slight aging, the slight off-white nature of the pickguard on the American Vintage lends a slightly more authentic edge to how the guitar looks. And if you are buying one of these to try and look like a pre-CBS Fender, then arguably little touches like this get you a little step closer and might just win you round on that front. But arguably the biggest difference, and probably the main USP of the American Vintage 2 series, and it's on every guitar, is as opposed to the gloss poly lacquer that is on the Vintera and is standard for Fender's production, the American Vintage 2s have nitrocellulose lacquer. Now, for those of you that don't know, that is the same lacquer that Fender originally used, and when you've seen guitars from this era that have worn all the way through to the natural grain of the wood, that is possible because of nitro. It's a lot softer, it's a lot thinner, and it's a lot easier to wear. So if you want a guitar that maybe in 20, 25 years reflects how you've used it and slightly worn, then nitro's the only way to do it, and the American Vintage 2 is the only series in the catalogue that currently offers this. But tonally, I think these both stack up very nicely. It's just kind of certain cosmetic features or slight spec appointments that may win you around either way, but I think tonally they both do a great job of getting that kind of classic pre-CBS Fender sound. So I'm going to use them both in the middle position, so you can kind of compare as closely as possible. That sounded really warm, really articulate to me, which the Vintage 57 pickups do a great job of kind of capturing that warmth and that modern pickups just sometimes don't have really. And the Vintera as well, I think, does a really good job of capturing that sound as well, although there are slight nuances and differences that you'll hopefully hear here. I'll play a similar kind of example. So in fairness, they do actually feel fairly different. Like I say, the C-shaped neck is a little bit more maybe comfortable to move around with, and the action out of the box on the Vintera is quite a bit lower, so it feels very quick and easy to play. Although I'd argue maybe I prefer the tones from the 57 pickups. They're maybe a little bit warmer and articulate. And as I said before, I think it is horses for courses. It's what you're looking for out of the guitar, and one of these is probably a little bit closer to what you're after than the other. Okay, then on to the Teles. So this is a comparison for the two American-made series in Fender's current catalogue. So you've got the American Vintage 2 and the American Professional 2. So if you're looking for an American-made Fender and you're not quite sure which of these may suit you, we're just going to look at some of the differences. So we'll start with the Vintage then. And I've just had a quick blast through this, and I've got to say this just embodies the kind of spirit of 60s Fenders and Telecasters. So you've got the same kind of chunkier feeling neck. You've got the clay dot inlays that just radiate that kind of vintage aesthetic. But I've got to say the real standouts for me were these 63 pickups, which are, they just deliver the archetypal Tele sound. They're warm and bright simultaneously. They have that kind of snap and twang. And it just sounds exactly like you imagine a Telecaster should. On the other hand, the American Professional 2, as you can see, even down to the finish, I matched them as closely as we could get, but the Mystic surf green finish on this is metallic and sparkly and represents the kind of more modern innovation from Fender. It's got more tonal versatility under the hood thanks to the push-pull coil tapping, so you can put the two pickups in series. And it's got the 9.5-inch fingerboard radius, so it's a slightly flatter fretboard, which a lot of people think is slightly easier to play or faster to play. But again, they both sound like Telecasters. This isn't massively radical differences. It's slight differences in the spec appointments that maybe suit someone that wants a more maybe modern, contemporary designed, ergonomic playing guitar, or someone that really wants the kind of purist dream of a pre-CBS Telecaster. But we'll just quickly A/B them now and have a quick play through them both so you can hear how they stack up to each other. And again, we'll keep the settings on these the same. So middle position, so you're hearing both pickups, and playing obviously similar riffs to keep it as close to an A/B comparison as we can get really on the fly. And now the American Professional 2. So as you've heard there, especially with activating the coil tapping, that opens up a world of tonal options that Teles can't usually get to. And that's what's great about the American Professional 2s, are the modern innovations that put them slightly beyond what you would expect of the models. Whereas the vintage authentic spec of the 63 means that's going to get you closer to the vintage sound and feel than the pros ever can. And so it's just what you are looking for and which suits you better. Finally then, onto the Thinlines. Now, these two are actually the biggest difference in terms of price. We're comparing a top-of-the-line Fender to a Squier Classic Vibe. Probably nearly £2,000 difference there. But what's really interesting, and I think what's instantly noticeable, is that on both of these models, how well Fender have done in recreating, in my eyes, one of the most characteristic and distinctive designs ever. Obviously the semi-hollow ash design with the F-holes. But what I instantly noticed with the 57 is that, in my opinion, this could be the closest Fender have ever got to recreating a 72 Thinline outside of the 1970s. The neck has that classic feel that vintage necks, Fender necks do have. The Cunifee humbuckers recreate the 70s kind of tones in really staggering fashion. They're slightly more open, maybe with a slight more mid-presence than 60s pickups. But equally, what's really stood out to me is, for the money, how close the Squier gets as well. The Fender-designed humbuckers, while maybe not quite as articulate as the Cunifee, do a cracking job of giving you that same sound. The neck is incredibly fast and comfortable to play, and for the money, this is a remarkable take on a 72 Thinline. And I'll A/B this now to show you why both of these are cracking choices if you're chasing a 72 Thinline. And onto the Squier. So again, just reinforcing, I think the nitro finish in the lacquering, the very distinctive feeling neck profile, and the articulation and authentic tones that the Cunifee humbuckers produce means if you're wanting as close to a genuine 72 Thinline within the modern market, you aren't going to get much better than this. But equally, for the money, this Squier Classic Vibe does a remarkable job at giving you that same thing. I don't think anyone, if we're being totally honest, is expecting this to stack up like for like against a top-of-the-line Fender. But I think it goes to show that for the money, and the amount of value for money that's in this is quite spectacular, given that it can, to an extent, hold its own against one of Fender's flagship products now. So, as you've hopefully seen, the American Vintage 2s do have certain USPs that really separate them out from anything else in the catalogue. The nitro finish is a big one, and this isn't accessible anywhere else. And how authentic the necks feel is a really big one for me, and coming down and having a go with a few of them today, that's what stood out. These necks are the most authentic replicas out of anything in Fender's current production run. If you've enjoyed this content, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I've been Tom for Gear4music. Thank you ever so much for watching. I'll see you next time.